Hi, I'm Pastor Steve with Screaming Rock Ministries, presenting Faith and Hope for Today. Genesis is the beginning of the recorded history of humanity and reveals that God has a plan, has always been there for us, has already defeated evil. Will you join us for a thought-provoking journey to the solutions of life's complexities?
Sometimes it's hard for me to remember you running. Pace of life just gets so out of hand. I try my best, but it's just never good enough. I'm reminded of how much I need to know. You are for me, you're not against me. You are with me, I'm not alone. Through all the darkest times and brightest days, I know some things will always stay the same. I'm not
Welcome.
alone.
We're really glad that you have a few minutes to spend with us today. We have an exciting new presentation. Before we get into that, I'd like to just thank Sherry for this incredibly wonderful picture of the sheep making their run from the mountains down in the fall. This is October, and you can see they're just grazing their way home, headed south. This is just between the hospital there at St. Luke's and moving towards Haley. So thank you, Sherry. Great picture. Grew up on a sheep farm, so this really speaks volumes to me. I hope you enjoy it too. So, Faith and Hope for Today is the name of our series. We're presenting the book of Genesis to you. We're going to present Genesis as a historical narrative, as God is unfolding to Moses the origin and the history of man. So just keep that in mind, that when we talked about the book of Revelation, we talked about how we're seeing the future from God's perspective. The book of Genesis is the origin of man from God's perspective, not from Moses. That's why his story doesn't look anything like the stories of the cultures surrounding him. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's move right ahead in our presentation. Now, Genesis is written as a narrative. That's an unfolding of history. God is revealing it to Moses under inspiration. We're not reading it as if Moses is recalling something from his formal education, from the things he learned at the university. You see, Moses was educated by the very best scholars of his day in the University of Egypt. Genesis is given from God's point of view. It is correcting the other stories from other cultures. God is setting the record straight for all of humanity. So the story of Genesis stands apart from all the historical stories of the flood and the origin and the creation of man in all the other global cultures that are very ancient. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's begin with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void. Darkness was over the surface of the deep. Doesn't sound like a great place you'd want to be, does it? The Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the water, and then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. Now that would be an interesting thing to actually see in person, wouldn't it? So God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, and there was one day. Then God said, "Let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." And God made the expanse and separated the waters which were below the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse, and it was so. So we're talking here about this expanse, this atmosphere of the planet, and God has just pulled all of the moisture, all of the water out of the atmosphere of the planet. Are you with me on this? Just follow along here. God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening, and there was morning, a second day. Then God said, "Let the waters below the heavens be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, And the gathering of the waters he called the seas. And God saw it was good. And I'm going to tell you, when I'm standing there in the lakes and the oceans and I see that water, I say the same thing. This is good. There's nothing more wonderful to me than just standing there on the ocean and watching the waves come in. It's just a beautiful, peaceful thing. Now in verse 11, then God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees on the earth bearing fruit after their kind with seed in them. And it was so. Now, please pay attention to the vocabulary of God. When God speaks a thing, it forms and appears. It's like you could see these plants appear up out of the ground, come to full maturity, and see the fruit on them. And God says it was so. Now, I want you to understand that as the Creator, we're going to look at this in the New Testament here in a few minutes, that there's something about the vocabulary of God that's profoundly important, that somehow the molecular structures and the essence of creation responds to the very thoughts and mind and voice of God in a remarkable and extraordinary way, unlike that of human beings. I think that's profoundly significant. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed after their kind, trees bearing fruit with seed in them after their kind. And God saw it was good. There was evening and there was morning, a third day. Now, the word day there that's appearing each time, and we're on the third day, that word in Hebrew simply literally means a day, a 24-hour period. It cannot mean 1,000 years. As much as somebody may want to think that, it does not mean that. It just simply means, and the language is very specific here, it just simply means it was a day. And this entire thing unfolded. Now there's something even more miraculous in this story. We'll get to this in just a moment. Verse 14, then God said, let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. So now we have the appearance of, in the fourth day, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Let's look at verse 16. God made the two great lights, the greater light to govern the day, and the lesser light to govern the night, and he made the stars also. Now, can you just hold your breath for just a minute here? Sun, moon, and stars not appearing in existence until after all of plant and vegetation came into existence, which means that God had to sustain the chlorophyll and all the activity of those plants prior to the arrival of the sun. Remember, I promised you a little miracle that took place in this story? Remember that first light that was created that first day is a unique light? Now he brings on the sun, moon, and the stars, and it's the fourth day. Isn't that amazing? Verse 17, God placed them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, and to govern the day and the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. God saw that it was good. There was evening, and there was morning, and there was a fourth day. Wow. Remarkable and wonderful story. Now we're at verse 20. Then God said, let the waters teem with swarms of living creatures. And I just have to love, Sherry and I were on the ocean there on the Pacific coast, and in that picture, actually, if I pulled that picture back, there might be 15 or 20 just beautiful starfish of various colors in there. And, there's barnacles, there's just all kinds of life in that little picture of things that are all over those rocks. The waters teem with swarms of living creatures, and there they are. They just simply appear. And let the birds fly above the earth in the open expanse of the heavens. Verse 21, then God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarmed after their kind, and every winged bird after its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, and a fifth day. Now, I want to point out something really important, that every winged bird and every creature produces after its own kind, which is still a biological law, a natural law, if you would, that birds only make birds, and fish only make fish, and cows only make cows. Cows do not make sheep. Cows do not make horses. It's built into the DNA structure of creation itself, and that law is still unfolding consistently today. There was evening, and there was morning, a fifth day. Then God said, let all the earth bring forth living creatures after their kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, and after their kind. And it was so. God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the cattle after their kind, and everything that creeps on the ground after its kind. You think God's making a point here to Moses? And God saw that it was good. There's that beautiful little foal there in front of its mother in that deep grass. After its kind is a consistent story. We don't have cross-species evidence ever. What God said is the way it has been from the very beginning. It is a consistent creation. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, over the earth, all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. And God created man in his own image. He created them male and female. He created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, this is a very controversial passage today, because here's very clearly that the DNA of Adam is that of a man, and the DNA of Eve is that of a woman. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. There is no gender confusion here. Gender confusion today and gender issues today is the result of the ongoing decline of humanity. It is not from creation itself. Then God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of all the earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the sky, and to everything that moves on the earth, which has life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. Now I'm going to pause here for just a moment and say, the first diet, the ideal nutrition for creation, was vegan. Okay, now that's going to change in the book of Genesis. You're going to get several diet options. But at this point in the ideal created world, this was the nutrition that was suited best for mankind. But it looks like it says that for everything on the earth as well, that the purpose of plants was for food for everyone. Verse 31, God saw all that he had made, and behold, it wasn't just good, it was very, very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Now that is the end of chapter 1, but the creation story continues into Genesis chapter 2. Thus the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their hosts. By the seventh day God completed his work which he had done. He rested on the seventh day from all of his work which he had done. So I want you to think about this. God enters into his rest. He is now able on the seventh day to celebrate all that is very, very good on this planet called Earth. including man and woman, and all the animals and all of the plants. Please notice verse 3 of chapter 2. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all of his work which God had created and made. So I put a little note on this slide for you. Sanctified simply means holy. God declares something to be holy. It is because it is his possession. It is his Sabbath. And he made it a holy thing. It can never be made into something else unless God declares it. So situated in the weekly calendar on the seventh day is a thing God declared holy. Today we know we worship the God of creation by entering into his holy day and entering into his rest. Now listen carefully, which is gospel language, means that on the seventh day you enter in from your own works and rest. And that has a gospel tone to it. There's something gospel-centered in the Sabbath rest. Are you with me on this? Are you resting from your works and joining God in his rest? Now let's go into this second part of creation, Jesus and the creation story, John chapter 1. Follow along. In the beginning was the Word. That word is capitalized. I did not capitalize it. It should be that way in almost every Bible. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and he was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him. This is Jesus. And apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In other words, Jesus was the active agent in the creation story in the Gospel of John chapter 1. In him was life, and life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness didn't comprehend it. Remember that light that came into existence. There is a light that is joy, that is filled with something wonderful. And that light Christ has put into mankind. It's like this light is the goodness of God. And that light shines in the darkness. But the darkness didn't quite get it. Now, remember I told you that Jesus was the active agent in creation? Notice what Matthew 12:8 says. For the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. If he was the active agent of creation, if he is the one who was involved in the plants and the animals and the separation of the waters and the arrival of the sun, moon, and stars on the fourth day and the sustaining of all of plant life on the third day, then Jesus, the active agent of creation, is also what? He is the Lord of the Sabbath. Now, I want you to think about this. The whole world, every seventh day, enters into God's rest. Okay? I just want that to settle in your mind. Remember, this was God's creation. And now we read where Jesus himself is the Lord of the sanctified holy Sabbath day. So if you worship Christ, you are involved in entering into that Sabbath rest with him as Lord of the Sabbath. He is still celebrating the Sabbath from the creation itself to this day, because it's sanctified, it's holy, and it is still a day of rest in the heavenly realm. You can celebrate it with him. Now listen carefully. This boggles my mind. We have a weekly cycle. Sunday's the first day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then we come to the seventh day. Are you aware that the entire world enters into his Sabbath? And they enter into it one of two ways. Either come Friday evening, entering into that Sabbath period through all of Sabbath into the Sabbath evening, does the majority of the world, are people just so busy that they enter into this period of holy time without even acknowledge the existence of God and his creation? They're just too busy to notice. Everyone enters every week into God's creation Sabbath in one way or another. Either too busy to pay any attention or to enter into it as an act of worship. I think that's pretty profound. I think that if you just process that, the Sabbath isn't some isolated thing for some small group of people. As Jesus is the Lord of the Sabbath, as our Lord and Savior, is inviting the whole world to join him in resting from our works. There's a health benefit to that. There's a psychological and a physical healing benefit to that. And he made it available to the entire human race. Now, you can say a lot of things. You know, you could say all kinds of things, like you could say, well, the Sabbath has been done away with. No, it hasn't. There's nowhere it says the Sabbath is done away with. It's a sanctified, holy thing. It's never been done away with except by man. Because you see, Jesus, the Lord of the Sabbath, would have to have said, I'm throwing away my creation Sabbath. You know, I would argue this, that if mankind had faithfully entered into the Sabbath, the theory of evolution would have never come into existence. We would all be celebrating creation. And I think that's one of the great challenges of our religious culture today. Every culture nearly has a creation story of some kind. But are we people worshiping the Creator God and his Son, the Lord of the Sabbath? Which means that we have this joy of entering into a day of rest from the craziness of this world? Well, then you got to have the list. We got to have right Sabbath keeping. We've got to eat right, dress right, and act right. How do you do this? Steve, you say, how can you bring this up? You know, you can't just drop this on us. Well, on this slide, what I want to say to you is this. The celebration of the creation Sabbath is a faith experience. Faith is always an affirmative response, a yes to God. So when you come to the seventh-day Sabbath, you say, today I'm going to say yes to God and enter into his rest. Now, keep in mind, faith doesn't care what the rest of the world thinks. You see, every seventh day I'm meeting with God. I'm entering into his rest with him as a faith experience. Now, I have friends who do it as a duty. And boy, let me tell you, they have a checklist. You can't do this and you can't do this. And their Sabbath is essentially having them sitting in a chair waiting for the day to pass. But it's a creation Sabbath. It's a day in which we look at all that God has made that is good, and we can enjoy and celebrate the goodness of the creation of God by putting aside all the nonsense of whatever happened Sunday through Friday. And we can just be free to celebrate the joy of creation. A creation that came into existence by a vocabulary in which every atom and molecule responds to the voice of God himself. As the creator, they do what he says. You can enter into that rest with him. So here's what I find interesting. The gift of God's rest is still giving us spiritual and physical blessing every seventh day. It's there. It's waiting for you and for me, all of your friends and family. It's simply there for everyone. Jesus said to them, you see, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So when man comes along and tries to make a man's Sabbath, then they're taking what is sanctified and holy away from God as if they have permission to do that. But what man has the permission to take what is holy and sacred, declared by God himself, into their hands and reshape it and make it into something for man? I just find that to be typical of humanity. You see, we don't do that with just the Sabbath. We virtually do that with everything that is good. We have a way of meddling with creation to make it things God did not intend it to be. That's what the nature of sin is like. That is the natural nature of man, is to try to undo what God has already done, because we are not in harmony with God since the fall, and that'll be part of our next conversation. Jesus said to them, the Sabbath was made for you, not you for the Sabbath. So think about this. In the French Revolution, they went to a 10-day week. Do you know why they changed it back to the 7-day week? Because it was beginning to break down the population of France, because the 10-day week was causing such stress and duration for them that it wasn't healthy. You talk to somebody who works 7 days a week, you'll talk to somebody who's really burned out, really stressed, struggling with their health. Enter into that rest and be healed. So I want to go to our last picture. I hope you enjoy this. You have Mac with the green ball and his big smile there. And you have Zena on the right. Now, why am I bringing you this picture? Because in our home studio, when we're recording, sometimes these guys get just a little rambunctious. Right now, they're all laying in the corner and just relaxed and having a good time. But I want you to know that periodically, if you hear these sounds of someone chasing the ball out the door, they are just sort of part of our family. And so I wanted you to meet Zena and Mac. They're part of who we are and what we do, just so you know what those funny noises are. I want to invite you to continue our study of Genesis. I want you to enjoy the Word. Thank you for watching today. Our email address is screamingrockministries@gmail.com, or drop us a note to Screaming Rock Ministries, P.O. Box 5622, Twin Falls, Idaho 83303.